Hello, everyone. This is WCG Radio of Windy City Gridirons of SB Nation, Chicago Bears website. We provide you the best possible Chicago Bears coverage, discussion, everything along those lines to the best degree as we can. This is Robert Zaglinski, as usual, your co-host of WCG Radio. And joining me again this week is Andrew Link. Andrew, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Robert. How you doing?
I'm just busy enjoying yet another quarterback controversy and arguing with people on social media and on Twitter, kind of reveling in it more or less. This is tradition, right? So
yes.
I don't know. Life hasn't taken a back seat to usual Bears inane stupidity, right? But it's been fun. It's been fun. It's been a good week. It's been a good week aside from the Bears loss. It's been a good week.
It's good. Good.
Yeah, so let's jump right into that loss. I just mentioned that frustration. Bears fell 23-17 against the Falcons. Came up 6 yards short of upsetting the defending NFC champions. Mike Glennon's debut, obviously most in focus here. That's been kind of the raging topic that I also just noted over the past few days here in Chicago. We've had that tug and pull. We obviously have a lot to discuss aside from this, but this has obviously been the primary discussion point. But yeah, there's been that tug and pull of putting in the placeholder and letting him get comfortable versus inserting the future and Mitchell Trubisky now in. And when you look at the Bears' game plan from Sunday, really conservative. Some general notes where they went 27 minutes without a complete pass. Where the final 12 minutes of the first half they didn't complete a pass. Mike Glennon having, I think, 51 yards passing. I think 41 approximately through almost three quarters, and somehow got to over 50 by the end of the third quarter, which brought up a lot of discussion as to whether why couldn't a rookie quarterback, doesn't matter his inexperience, like Trubisky, be able to do that? What's the point in not him having to take in his lumps versus the guy that's not going to be the future? Obviously, a lot of different facets we're going to have to touch on with this, I guess, controversy. But Andrew, your initial thoughts on how this has kind of developed over the past week. This has obviously been something that's kind of been raging the entire summer, and especially in the preseason once Trubisky started to play well. But let's try to limit this to how it's gone over the past few days ever since the Falcons game.
Yeah, so actually, it's funny that we start off with that because I was actually in the midst of kind of going through all the passing plays and charting those on the All-22. I just signed up for NFL Game Pass this morning, so I was kind of going through that today. And I got through basically, halfway through the second quarter so far, so I'm obviously not done with that. But there were a lot of plays that I felt were left out on the field as far as Glennon was concerned. I do think that you're right. If you're talking about having 50 yards passing through three quarters, why can't Mitch Trubisky do that? I mean, look, I'm not discounting the fact that I think that Glennon played well in the fourth quarter. But look, they were playing in a kind of a prevent shell defense, and he was dinking and dunking down the field. And I want to say he only had 4 pass attempts over 10 yards in the entire game. So
5. It was 5 over 10.
5. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and he only completed,
really taking away credit from him. Really taking away credit.
Yeah, and he only completed 2 of those attempts. So it's like, at some point, you have to start looking at the offense and saying, all right, if you want to be a run-oriented team, you have to throw the ball down the field at some point, or else teams are just going to play you how the Falcons did, or like the Arizona Cardinals did in the preseason, and stack the box. And they're gonna dare you to pass on them. And if Mike Glennon just does not have enough confidence in himself and his arm, or is comfortable enough in the pocket to be able to stand in there and throw the ball deep, this offense is just never going to score any points. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and that kind of points to an interesting something that I've noted in the past few days. It felt like the Bears almost had Glennon on training wheels, which you understand his limitations. You understand he hasn't really started a game in over 2 years or was anointed as the team's primary guy under center. So you might want to ease him into things a little bit. But if he's a 27-year-old veteran, for me, whatever thought you have of him letting you fly, do it. Why are you limiting your offense? Why is your receiving core is depleted, which we'll get to, but there's no threat whatsoever for him to have any success. For him, you're already putting him in a precarious position. You're, in essence, helping fuel this quarterback controversy, this angry sentiments from fans, an angry mob forming, metaphorical angry mob forming outside of House Hall. I mean, essentially the game plan the Bears employed, like you kind of just alluded to it, the Falcons just were able to mug Bears receivers. They didn't have to fear Bears receivers for one after Kevin White's injury, after Cameron Meredith's injury. There's no real proven playmaker on the outside yet there. And they knew they didn't have to fear Glennon's arm or him testing them downfield because, for one, they've seen Glennon before, even if it was in the past. And for one, because the Bears weren't trying it whatsoever. So it's an interesting dichotomy that they kind of tried to play there. It's almost as if they were trying to shoot themselves in the foot. A typical overthinking by John Fox and Dowell Loggins, routine rather, if we're going according to Fox.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Part of the thing that bugs me too is, again, like I mentioned, I've been watching the All 22 this morning, and the thing that bothers me is, I'm only through like 9 passing plays, and on 2 of them, there legitimately were 2 plays where you had Kevin White on one and Deontay Thompson on another, where the old rule, if you're even, you're leaving. And there was no safety help over the top. They were, had their guy even or slightly behind him. And it's like, okay, well, if you throw the ball in the right spot, that's a touchdown, okay? And the good quarterbacks in the NFL can make that throw. NFL receivers are not always wide open. Good NFL quarterbacks, or even decent NFL quarterbacks, can find ways to get balls to receivers that aren't wide open. You have to be able to get the ball on certain shoulders. You have to be able to get the ball, placed in a certain area where they can make a play on the ball. And at some point throughout the course of a game, you have to take those shots, or else you're just not going to score. I mean, 17 points, that's what the Bears scored last year, and the average last year. That's what they scored last week. This team has to be better than that. Like you said, fine is not good enough. Fine is not good enough in the NFL. It just isn't. Not to win games anyway.
I'll touch on that, but talk about his pocket awareness. So we obviously have his limitations as a thrower, but talk about the pocket awareness that kind of that's also been ragging on everybody.
So, there was 4 sacks in the game. And then there was another throw that ended up being reviewed at one point that they wanted to see, was it a fumble or a forward pass? Was he in the grasp? All that sort of thing. All 5 of those plays were easily avoidable, in my opinion. I think that Glennon might be the only quarterback in the NFL, maybe somebody like Brock Osweiler or something like that, but everybody else, I think, gets out of those situations and at least throws the ball away and doesn't take the sack there. He had places to go. Even on that last play of the game, he had, 5 yards to work with easily on the right side if he steps up and moves right. Instead, he moves left into Charles Leno Jr., and then, from the backside, he gets sacked. And people want to blame Bobby Massey. That wasn't Bobby Massey's fault. Bobby Massey did what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to take his guy to a certain spot. And when the quarterback is in shotgun and he has a 3-step drop or whatever the case may be, linemen are taught to bring them to a certain area beyond the quarterback so that they can step up and move in the pocket. Bobby Massey did his job. Charles Leno Jr. did his job. Mike Glennon did not do his job. And basically, I think that Mike Glennon just freaks out a lot. I think he has happy feet. I think he moves the wrong way. He has a bad feel for pressure, where it's coming from, how to elude it. And early in the game, it was apparent to me that regardless of whether or not there was receivers open downfield, he wasn't giving them a chance. He was just dumping the ball off. And again, that needs to change. He needs to trust his offensive line and, give them an opportunity to protect him. I mean, there was another sack where he literally had a wall in front of him and stepped into the rush. And it was like, you can't do that.
It's just exasperating.
Yeah, it is. It's frustrating because, he has time. He had time all game, and he made it look like he didn't have time because he just doesn't move well in the pocket. And part of that, too, is I think because he's so long-limbed that it's hard for him to move quickly. And I think that his drops are deeper than most people's are because his legs are so long. So I think that there's an adjustment period, too, for the offensive line and the scheme in general to kind of adjust to how deep he's going to be in the backfield.
What's crazy to me, and I kind of mentioned this, and I remember I wasn't saying it as a joke. I mean, you guys found it funny, though, but I mentioned this. I'm watching this last Sunday night's football game, Cowboys and Giants, and I'm seeing Eli Manning, 36, 37-year-old guy, been around forever, and he looks awful. The Giants' offensive line is awful. But immediately pops into my head as soon as I see him evade pressure for even a second. Oh, my God, Eli Manning is more athletic than Mike Glennon. Oh, my God. It just hit me right in the face. Especially after seeing Glennon's pocket presence, especially after seeing everything you just broke down. It was uncanny. So in that respect, let's jump over to – I don't know when we're going to see him. I don't know when the Bears will budge on this, but I feel like it's coming probably sooner than later. How would Mitch Trubisky remedy some of these issues as soon as he starts? What would he bring to the table? People want to notice inexperience. People want to say you're breaking your prized Christmas toy under the tree. Kind of debunk all that and bring it to the light, Andrew.
Well, first things first, I think that the game plan changes when Mitch Trubisky comes in there. I think that there's two different offenses that Donald Loggins is basically going to put together as far as game plans for Mike Glennon and for Mitch Trubisky. I mean, they couldn't have more different skill sets as far as athletic ability, accuracy, throwing on the run, that sort of thing. So I think you're going to see a little bit more of a wide open spread. I don't want to say a college type offense, but I think you're going to see something similar to that, at least as a rookie for Mitch Trubisky. Right. So I think you're going to see, a lot more shotgun. You're probably going to see more of like a zone read option type of running attack where he has a run pass option, a lot of RPOs probably in there. I think that the whole game plan is going to be different. But as far as the difference between the two, the plays where Glennon is struggling with pressure, it's really not pressure up the middle for him. It's pressure on the outside. And I think that what we saw in the preseason is that Mitch Trubisky has a wonderful feel for pressure. He eluded pressure on a consistent basis with a third string offensive line in the preseason. And I think that his ability to throw on the move, make plays, make something out of nothing, scramble drills, things like that is going to open up a lot of things. And especially on third down where, Glennon's either throwing the ball away, he's throwing it to a running back, or he's taking a sack. I think those are the kind of plays where you're going to see Trubisky either, get out of the pocket and make something happen with his legs. He's going to get out of the pocket, make something happen with his arm, kind of on a scramble drill sort of thing. Or at the very least, he's going to make the linebackers freeze because of the threat of the run. And what that's going to do is that's going to open up those intermediate passing plays behind the linebackers in front of the safety, and at least allow him the opportunity to say, all right, well, you need to pick your poison, because if you go back and turn your back on me, I'm going to pick up that first down with my legs. If you face me and you come up and you come up to try to stop me, I'm going to throw it over the top of you, and I'm going to get that first down. So that's the thing that Mitch Trubisky offers that Mike Glennon does not, is the threat of running, and the accuracy of throwing on the run is so dangerous.
Before we move on from this, I mean, quite frankly, exhausting quarterback conversation. Seriously, I just want to debunk. Okay, so I mean, yeah, you're laughing because it is. It's exhausting.
It is, yeah.
The first excuse that I see for Glennon is the receiving corps, which is obviously, as I noted, Kevin White now injured, Cameron Meredith now injured. You don't have any proven playmakers. Oh, how could Glennon do anything, or why would it be wise to insert Trubisky in with this group of wideouts? Well, for one, a good quarterback or a playmaking quarterback can make his receivers better. I mean, at minimum, that's what Jay Cutler was, a playmaking quarterback, and he. For the first few years of his career in Chicago, he made Devin Hester, guys like Johnny Knox, guys like Devin Aroma should be relevant. That's kind of what you would ideally see in Trubisky, given his general athleticism that you kind of just espoused there. And for lack of matter, outside of the receivers, I mean, the offensive supporting cast for Trubisky isn't awful. The Bears have a good offensive line. The Bears have a good stable of running backs. They have a solid enough defense to support him, to keep pressure on him to where he doesn't have to feel the need to force the issue. Offensively, if they get down big, the Bears defense can keep them in games, can probably by the end of the year win them games, if we're being realistic.
Don't forget they have pretty decent tight ends too.
And they have pretty decent tight ends that they didn't – I mean, they used Deion Sims aplenty, but they didn't really use them in the passing game as much as you would have wanted against Atlanta. I mean, in Trubisky.
Yeah, Deion Sims was actually open pretty much on an almost every play basis in the second half.
Yeah,
he was open a lot, and I think that was a missed opportunity. I think that Deion Sims has the potential to be a really, I'm not saying he's going to be a great tight end. Don't get me wrong here, but he could be very solid. He could be a Desmond Clark type of guy, and let's face it, as Bears fans, would we not love to have Desmond Clark back on the team? Yeah, I sure would.
Give me a great blocker, catches 45 passes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Trubisky would actually use those. There's actually a solid enough supporting cast to support him. And then there's the other interesting argument to where, maybe you let Glennon take these lumps. He's the placeholder. You don't want to put your guy in and ruin him before he's ready. That's not how it works. I mean, you have like some comparisons, and I don't want to put anyone on blast. I'm not going to specifically put them on blast, but like you have comparisons of David Carr with the Houston Texans. That was an expansion team. That was one of the worst offensive lines in NFL history. That was one of the least talented teams in NFL history. That isn't these Bears. If you're going to be afraid of breaking your toy, you might as well be the collector, just putting like the nice little action figure on the shelf, never using it. What's the point of that? I've never seen the logic in that, and that's the same thing applies in the NFL. Why waste your time with Glennon, especially when he's proven that he can't even – I mean, I guess he put you in position to win when it was more of the team's effort having him be able to do that. But instead of having Trubisky and seeing what you have, maybe he isn't going to be great, but putting him in there, take him out of the box. He's not going to break. I assure you. And even if he will, it's the NFL. It's guys get hurt. Guys go through their lumps. He'll have bad games. He'll also have really good games. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's a frustrating debate. I think it'll come to an end soon. Ideally, than as we're making this seem dire right now. But only time will tell how it'll play out. So let's move from these quarterbacks, please. Finally, to Tariq Cohen's electric debut. Broke a Bears all-purpose record with 154 total yards. Andrew, I mean, I kind of talked about it during the game. I advocate that Bears play-by-play radio man Jeff Jones should bring back "You Are Too Ridiculous" for him. Maybe it's a little too early, but he was pretty great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were both at training camp, and I don't want to say I necessarily expected him to come out and break a Bears rookie record, his first game out. But I do think that you and I probably, we've talked about this when we were at camp and, throughout the off season after seeing him in person and say, hey, look, this guy looks like he's the real deal. And I don't think that either one of us are probably all that surprised to see him come out and perform the way that he did. I mean, we saw him bouncing off of guys, spin moves in the open field, things like that in training camp. And obviously that's not live tackling, but you kind of got the sense that even if those guys were trying, they still wouldn't have been able to tackle him. And that's kind of what we saw, So it wasn't a fully surprising to me. I think that what I saw on tape and what I saw in training camp was a guy who was more put together than he was given credit for. And when you saw him bounce off of guys and even bulldoze, a cornerback into the end zone for a touchdown, that's kind of what I expected to see out of him. And now he's going to have to learn how to, curtail some of that in order to have longevity in the NFL, like a Darren Sproles does. But that being said, I think he's a lot tougher than people give him credit for. And I do think that given his toughness and the strength that he possesses, he's more than just a gimmicky, kind of running back.
Yeah, let's be real. He's not going to get 20 touches every game. I don't want him to have 20.
No, I don't either.
Because he won't last. He won't. He's too small. I mean, maybe he's that tough to wear, but eventually his body would wear down. I mean, everyone's human. But yeah, everything. It's just crazy. It doesn't always happen like this. But guys, typically, from my experience, when they show out in training camp, aside from the Bears' white wide receivers, which we obviously have to get to one later, typically every other position for the Bears or NFL players that show out during practice, during camp, if they're playing well there, they probably belong. If they're playing well there, they have the ability. They're going against NFL players there. They might not be live tackling, but they're still making plays. I think part of Cohen's – I will say this. I think part of Cohen's successful debut against the Falcons was kind of that element of surprise because the Falcons were only able to see whatever the Bears offered in the preseason. I mean, the occasional open practice if they wanted to during training camp. But the Bears were kind of able to unleash him through every facet because there was nothing to prepare for. No one had seen this guy in live game action, and you kind of lose that element of surprise now. So I'm going to be interested to see how the Bears implement him moving forward. But it's really nice to have a capable, ideally and hypothetically, a nice, capable 1-2 punch. Yeah, 1-2 punch with Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. I mean, it's exciting. I saw some fans getting really hyperbolic and saying that this was the best in the league. It's one game, guys. I mean, there's still Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman. You saw those guys on Sunday. Maybe they were shut down, but they were going against a pretty good run defense. So let's not get that hyperbolic yet. But early signs are pretty good. Early signs of return are pretty good. Let's move over to injuries. Unfortunately, we're a week into the season. We already have two big ones to discuss. So there's one, Jarrell Freeman, your Mike linebacker. I know you have a unique take on him. Many think he's probably the linchpin of the defense, but he's not. You think he's not exactly a special player, or the guy that not necessarily not special, but that he's not the playmaker, or he's not like the kind of like core guy that anyone would believe. So he'll be replaced by Nick Kwiatkowski. And from the offensive side, we're depleted in an already barren receiving corps. Kevin White suffering a third consecutive early season-ending injury, breaking his scapula. Obviously, both of these injuries put the Bears in a precarious position, Andrew.
Yeah, they do. Let's start with Kevin White and get that out of the way. We talked last week. I think I was slightly higher on Kevin White than you were as far as my expectations. It's just you feel really bad for the guy. I mean, there's nothing that he's doing wrong in these situations. It's just this is football. And to be perfectly honest, I watched that play again, and Mike Glennon was almost 2 full seconds late getting the ball to him. And had he gotten the ball to him earlier, I don't think Kevin White gets injured. And I'm not blaming Mike Glennon. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying he got him injured. But the fact of the matter is had he got the ball to him quicker, he makes a cut. He probably gets the first down. Instead of fighting for extra yardage on a pass that was late and he sitting there trying to get a first down, he takes a pretty vicious hit, on the backside by defensive end, outside linebacker, or whatever kind of defense that the Falcons are playing. I think they're a 4-3, so it must be a defensive end. Was it Tack McKinley, I think, is the one who hit him?
Tack McKinley and Terry Poe, I think, coming over.
Yeah. So Tack McKinley, I think, is the guy who actually put the hit on his back. So that would be more than likely where the actual break occurred, was on that part of the hit. But I mean, that's my point, though, is if the timing on that route is fine, Kevin White's probably still, he's probably on his way to having a much better game, A, and B, he's probably not on the IR right now.
Yeah.
So I hate to keep, harping on Mike Glennon, but, that's how I saw it. And it just, it's unfortunate. Now, you did allude to kind of my thoughts on Joel Freeman a little bit. So don't get me wrong, Joel Freeman is a really good player, but what he is not is a playmaker. I mean, he didn't have one turnover last year for the Bears. And I think in his career, he's been pretty light on turnovers as well. Let's see here. Looks like he's been responsible for, 4 fumble recoveries, 9 forced fumbles, and 4 interceptions in his 5 seasons plus 1 game. So not exactly a world beater there as far as turnovers are concerned. So what he does really well is he gets off blocks and he doesn't miss tackles. So look, I was talking about Deion Sims being a Desmond Clark type of guy. That's what we're talking about. Joel Freeman is like the Desmond Clark of linebackers. He's really good at everything he does. He just doesn't necessarily
break the game
open. Yeah, he doesn't make those wow plays where you just go, oh man, like Brian Urlacher used to. See, Brian Urlacher is the exact opposite. He used to miss tackles. He wasn't great with blitzing. I don't know how many times he would blitz a quarterback and have him in the grasp and then get out of it and still make a play on the ball. But what Brian Urlacher did was he made these splash plays, interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries with long returns, things like that. You're just like, wow, that changes the game, the whole complexion of the game. But you need steady Eddie players, which Joel Freeman is. So I don't think the drop-off is going to be huge. I do think that Nick Kwiatkowski looked much better in training camp than he did last year. In the preseason, I thought he looked very assignment sound, which I think he struggled with a little bit last year. The difference is I do think that Kwiatkowski brings a little something different in that I think he's a really hard hitter, first of all. I think he's a better blitzer than Joel Freeman. So he brings some ability there. What I don't know is, can he get his hands on any passes? So the difference between last year, Kwiatkowski, and this year, besides the fact that he's going to be in his second year in the system, is he's finally playing his natural position, which is middle linebacker as opposed to the jack linebacker. And I think that he's going to do a much better job there because you get to play in more of a tight window and your responsibilities are more in front of you and you can kind of go downhill and attack, which is what Joel Freeman was really good at. But in that respect, I do think that Kwiatkowski has a it factor as far as blowing guys up. And he's what we all thought John Bostic was going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He can hit you like that, but he actually knows how to play football. Whereas John Bostic just could hit you hard.
Yeah, the difference in Kwiatkowski is that patience you noted. It'll be interesting to know. I wanted to touch back on White. I see people calling him a bust, and I don't necessarily disagree. I know people don't want to call guys who get injured bust because that's out of their control versus the player just being bad. So, I mean, I'll put an asterisk. He's an injury bust because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. He's a number 7 overall pick. None of it is his fault. It isn't. It isn't his fault. He didn't construct how his body was. He didn't construct how each of these – I mean, the last 2 hits are freak plays. He gets hit in the back. Last year against the Lions, catches a pass. His leg gets caught in the awful Soldier Field turf. and a defender rolls up into it with the full brunt of their weight on a freak injury. These are bad instances of misfortune, but he's still a bust. Considering now that I don't expect him to ever meaningfully contribute for the Bears. This was probably his last chance this was probably the last chance for him to really salvage something because, I mean, he's going to go in next year. He's still going to be on the team next year. I mean, I've seen people suggest that they should cut him. Oh, my God, like as if they're taking this incredibly personally. Calm down, first of all. They're not going to cut him, but he'll be a fourth-year receiver who has 5 NFL games played under his belt. Realistically, how is he going to be able to contribute? Realistically, how do the Bears not draft a receiver in the first 3 rounds or pick up a relatively big name in free agency and kind of start to move on without him? He hasn't proven anything. He hasn't proven anything to them to where they could invest in him, to where they could he's a 4th-year guy. He's one of our studs. The wheels are already been set in motion on him, and it's kind of a sad story because, yeah, like you said, you feel for the guy. You really feel for the guy. It's kind of heartbreaking to me. I mean, not every NFL player gets to make it. It seems to me that he's kind of had worse luck than usual because it's so magnified. But if he doesn't succeed with the Bears, which is, again, we both think is unlikely, and if he doesn't really gain traction with another NFL team, because I don't think he's going to hang up the cleats after this or when his time with the Bears is up, I mean, I just hope, and I'm getting really cliche here, I just hope he finds something else in life to where he doesn't have to define himself by the game. I don't think he does define himself by the game, which is a very, very good thing. It just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be in Chicago. That's the best way to say it. And I mean, at this rate, you just wish him the best.
Yeah, no, by all accounts, he's a really good human being. I mean, that's kind of what you hear about him. I mean, he's a good guy. He's a good guy in the locker room. He's always upbeat. You know, I think he's good at the community, stuff like that. So, you know, that's part of the reason why you feel for him. If the guy was a jerk, you'd be like, well, I can't feel all that bad for the guy.
He's not Ryan Leaf or anything.
You know, and on top of that, I think that the parallels to a guy like Jay Williams from the Bulls years ago, he got that motorcycle accident, and then his career that was kind of it for him. So I think it's kind of similar where you could say, okay, yeah, Jay Williams was a bust, but the what could have been is very similar, because I think a lot of people looked at Jay Williams and said, hey, this guy could have been a really good point guard in the NBA, and just like Kevin White could have been a really good NFL wide receiver. But the fact of the matter is sometimes your body, there's just some people whose bodies just weren't made for the NFL. I mean, let's face it, bones break. Who knows? I mean, that could be a hereditary thing. You know, it could be a million different reasons why that happens. It could just be bad luck, wrong place at the wrong time, you know, on the wrong point in the field. But, you know, I do feel bad for the guy because I don't think he's done anything wrong. I think it's just a horrible situation that happened to a nice guy.
Yeah.
That happens.
Ah, man, I just got really depressed. Let's move over to Bears and Bucs. So the Bucs, this will be their season opener after Hurricane Irma had displaced them and most of Florida, in fact, in a real life situation over the past week and a half or so. So this will be their season opener. They rescheduled their original game against the Miami Dolphins for a later season contest. Essentially, had their bye week, and this is the Mike Glennon revenge game. Is that what we're calling it? We're calling it the very, very polite Mike Glennon revenge game. He of who won 5 games as a starter with the Buccaneers and lost 14. I think it's a revenge game for all sarcasm aside. I think it's a revenge game for the Bears, who got trounced 36-10 last year after being the most confident 2-6 team of all time. I know you think that the Bears are going to come out on top here. I don't want to spoil your pick or anything. I kind of disagree, but there are things that the Bears can kind of pick at here with the Buccaneers. This is a preseason hype team. This is a team that many think is going to be in the playoffs. I don't buy that. I think there are still weaknesses the Bears can kind of get at very easily.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have my reasons for thinking that the Bears come out on top. I do think they played really well last week against the Falcons, and I do think that the Falcons are a better team than the Buccaneers. So, you know, the one thing that people want to point to is, okay, the Bucs have 2 weeks to prepare for the Bears. And in a sense, that's true, but there's only 1 week worth of film that they've had.
Right.
I mean, the preseason film doesn't really matter. I mean, it is what it is. So the Buccaneers have 1 week of film on the Bears, which, and the Bears don't have any on the Buccaneers. But that being said, I do think that the Bucs are relying on a lot of rookie players on offense, the skill position players. I do think that Jameis Winston has the ability to kind of throw the ball all over the place. I mean, he kind of has that Cutler gene in him as far as throwing the ball away is concerned. I also think that the hurricane situation is going to affect them negatively. Now, that could go either way. That could be a situation with the 2005 Saints where, they win one for the city kind of thing. But I'm going to go ahead and say that it's going to go the other way, because I think that this team was on Hard Knocks and they've had kind of distraction after distraction after distraction. And now all of a sudden their families are being displaced, themselves are being displaced, their homes, some of them are probably destroyed. They've been dealing with, FEMA and State Farm and Allstate or whoever does their homeowners insurance and different things like that. So, I mean, like some of these guys are dealing with things that are not pertinent to football. And I think that they're going to be distracted in some ways because of that. And I just don't think that the Buccaneers are that good. I think that they're a very overrated team. I think that they're a very cocky team. I haven't watched a lot of Hard Knocks, but I've watched enough of it to know that I don't know that they're good enough to act the way that they do about their team. That's just my opinion. But I think that the Bears got so close last week. I think that they're going to be so hungry to win a game that they're going to come out and just absolutely be hungry, just thirsty for a win. We should be getting Kyle Long back. We should be getting Prince Mukamara back, and we should be getting Kendall Marcus
Beaton
back. Yeah. So, you lose a couple of guys, but I think that the guys you get back are better than the guys that you lost.
From the football standpoint, the non-emotional standpoint, I alluded to kind of I was discussing this. I really appreciated it was Josh kind of said this was playing not to lose with the way the defensive game plan of the Bears against the Falcons. But I really appreciated it because the Falcons are an efficient, versatile offense. They just have so many weapons, and the ball's coming out. There's very quick releases from Matt Ryan. There's not really much of an opportunity for the pass rush together. I know Akeem Hicks had 2 sacks, but aside from that, it's not as if you're going to have an easy time getting in their backfield, just based off of their offensive design. So I loved how Vic Fangio elected to have guys like Leonard Floyd and Sam Acho and Willie Young, even in his limited snaps, in comparison to Acho, 40-20, had them drop back instead of having them pin their ears back consistently, because they knew they wouldn't be able to, because that took away the elements of Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman as receivers, as multifaceted guys. The Bears' game plan clearly was centered around stopping those guys, stopping them, as both didn't have 100 yards from scrimmage, rushing and as receivers. And that's, in essence, why the Bears were in the game until the very end, because the most important crux of their offense, as much as anyone will want to talk about Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, is that running game, and it's having that two-headed monster. And the Bears essentially shut them down. With Tampa Bay, which I think you're going to easily see, and given I wrote about it today, you'll see later, their offense is the exact opposite of that. They are high risk, high reward. Jameis Winston's last year, I think 56%. I don't have the article in front of me because it's done, it's scheduled. But 56% of his passes traveled at least 10 yards in the air. He had the third highest amount, which was 10th in the league. He had the third highest amount of passes over 10 yards, or at least 10 yards in the league. of every pass, it takes at least every pass that the Buccaneers had. It took at least 2.89 seconds to develop, which was sixth highest in the league. And he was also sixth highest pressured on those plays. So he's taking a lot of hits while going for shots to Mike Evans and Cameron Brate last year, the other starting side next to O.J. Howard. It's an offense that wants to take advantage of its guys downfield. It's an offense that wants to take advantage of Winston's cannon because he does have a big arm. And they've added Deshaun Jackson now. So this is the ideal team that you want to see Leonard Floyd unleashed against. This is the ideal team that you want to see Akeem Hicks and everyone else ball out. They did that last year, if we're being honest. Last year they had 4 sacks. They pressured Winston on 16 of his 37 dropbacks. They had 12 actual quarterback hits on him. They were in his face all day. They just didn't finish every play. I mean, if you remember, that's kind of reminiscent of the play to Austin Hooper on Sunday, where Leonard Floyd had 2 shots after coming free in a stunt on Winston, and eventually he evaded, and somehow, some way, he evaded him twice and got it down to Evans for like a 40-yard gain. That can't happen this time because the Bears are going to have similar success. It's going to be the key to how this defense forces turnovers off of Winston and gets him off his game because they're going to do it. And when they get every single opportunity, they have to finish it. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's just execution. I would expect a similar kind of performance. The Buccaneers' offensive line isn't anything to write home about, especially as they're stressed like this with constantly having to drop back against vicious pass rushers with a deep passing game offense. And I would expect that this game kind of be Floyd's breakout, that him kind of be the player of the game, along with Hicks or Hicks from the other perspective, to kind of set the tone for the game. These guys will be the reason the Bears win because I still think the offense led by Glennon is limited. I'm really curious to see how they kind of learn from last year's mistakes because based off of their performance, it shouldn't have been 36-10, and the trends point to them being able to enjoy that same thing. If as succinctly as possible.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying. And, the other thing to keep in mind is Atlanta has a pretty good running attack. And the Bears held on to 64 yards on
yes.
20-something
like
carries?
3.5 yards a carry.
Yeah. So you had 2 really good running backs and a pretty good offensive line, and you basically just completely eliminated the run from Atlanta's
You eliminated
offense.
the complete threat of those backs, not just the run. Yeah.
Well, I think that the game plan has to be the opposite, and I think you have to sit back and attack Jameis Winston, and you have to attack the wide receivers off the line of scrimmage. You have to play them up tight, mug them, and with a kind of a suspect offensive line, and Jaquiz Rodgers is your number 1 tailback.
Yeah, there's not as much as to worry about. This is a kind of playmaker.
So I think they have to kind of tee off on Jameis Winston and say, all right, our plan is to do basically like what the Giants used to do when they were going to Super Bowls, and that's just we're coming after your quarterback, and we don't care what else you do. This is our game plan, and I think Vic Fangio has to. I know he doesn't like to blitz a lot, but I don't care how you do it. Just go get him.
Ironically enough that you say that, most of the success that the Bears enjoyed pass rush-wise came on a 4-man rush. They only blitzed Winston 6 out of 37 dropbacks and still got in his face. I think the secondary has improved, but I don't expect the Bears to blitz them. I mean, I see your point, but I think the Bears can easily get there with their 4-man rush. I think the Bears can easily wreak havoc with the 4-man rush and keep everybody else disciplined and in place.
But even if you're gonna look at it like when I say blitzes, I mean when you're talking about a 3-4 defense.
Oh right, well, okay,
you're dropping Leonard Floyd into coverage and you're bringing Nick Kwiatkowski or Jenny Trevathan, who are both good blitzers. So that's what I mean. It doesn't necessarily have to be 5 or 6 rushers, but I want to see different looks. I want to see a lot of line stunts. I want to see guys coming from different places. Heck, I mean you can drop 2 outside linebackers into coverage and then bring your slot corner or strong safety up and blitz him off the edge as well, and just kind of give him different looks. I just want to see them mix up the pressure packages.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the kind of, to me, that's the key to the game, as I noted. If they're bringing him down at the multitude of opportunities they're going to get, it kind of won't really matter what Glennon or the offense does because they're going to have short fields. They're going to have consistently short fields, and Glennon's one of them, or rather Winston is one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the league. 18 interceptions last year, 5 fumbles lost. That's kind of what you get with this high-risk, high-reward offense with the kind of gunslinger mentality he has. And they better get some takeaways off of him because if they can't get takeaways off of Winston, they're not going to get takeaways off of anybody. That's just who he is. That's and he's going to give them a shot. I mean, let's put it like that. He's pretty confident in himself. He'll try to fit it into a window every now and then, even if he has time in the pass rush doesn't get there. So, more or less, I'm eager to see how that develops. As far as Glennon and the offense, what do you think they kind of need to do to have success here against Tampa's defense? Tampa's defense doesn't. I mean, they have a few nice players. Young talent, Levante David, Vernon Hargreaves is probably a nice player there on the boundary as a corner. Gerald McCoy, obviously, on the interior. What do the Bears need to do to have success offensively?
Well, first and foremost, and I think you can probably say this for the remainder of the season, is they need to run the ball. Their yards per carry, their total yardage output was very good last week. They only had 19 carries, though. And I think that despite the fact that, people want to say, oh, well, they couldn't throw late in the game. Yeah, they could. They had, that second to last drive, or they didn't go down by 2 scores until there was 11 minutes left in the game. You know what I mean? Like, that's more than enough time to continue to run the ball. And I'm sorry, but you're running 6.6 yards a carry. You got to keep running the ball because Mike Glennon was only averaging 5 yards per completion or per attempt. So you were gaining more yards on average with your running backs running the ball than you were throwing the ball. So at some point, I think you need to do a better job of establishing the run. And when I say establishing the run, I mean Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard did not get in a groove last week at all. And I think that he needs to get in a groove early in that game and just hit him in the mouth. And you can work Tariq Cohen into the game later. That's how I would personally do it. If you want to talk about a thunder and lightning or, however, kind of nickname that we want to give these two guys, I think you start with Howard, you pound him, and then you can open up the game. But off of that, and something we didn't see much of last week is I need to see a play action passing attack going down the field because, and honestly, I was calling for this on the first play of the game. I knew what the Falcons' defensive game plan was going to be. They're going to sit up with 9 men on the line of scrimmage and say, all right, beat us. And I would have run play action on the first play of the game because you know what? That's what they were expecting. And I would have gone 3 tight ends with 1 wide receiver out on the edge and, one-on-one matchup. He either wins it or he does, or you throw the ball away. But at least you took a shot. And I need to see that this week because the running game is not going to get off the ground properly unless they're taking more shots downfield. It just isn't.
Of note to just play off that before we move to the mailbag, Tampa had the league's 23rd rushing defense last year. So I'm not sure how much they've improved. That's obviously probably something they focused on in the offseason. But the Bears should have ample opportunity to take care of that. Before Jordan Howard had a fumble in last year's game that set up Tampa, one of Tampa's touchdowns, he was well on his way to 100 yards as well. The Bears were also gashing him there, but then kind of just lost track. So that points to what they're going to have to do easily. We have 2 questions that we'll specifically focus on from Ask WCG this week. Andrew, I'll let you pick. So the first question pertains to a quick coaches list, assuming Fox is out this year, and the other is how long does it take? It concerns Tanner Gentry and him becoming the next Jordy Nelson. So which one do you want? And I'll take the other.
Wow.
I assume you want the coaches. I'm going to assume that, but I'm not sure.
You know what? I'm going to take the Gentry one.
All right, go ahead.
I'm going to switch it up here because I did see that come across on Twitter. So it was something that I had an initial immediate reaction to it in my mind, and now I get a chance to actually vocalize that. So Tanner Gentry is not going to be Jordy Nelson. I'm sorry.
What?
I don't know who asked that question, but I'm just going to break that to everybody.
I'm pretty sure this is this is at John Fake _ Faker. He wasn't really being serious, but he was kind of alluding to the expectation. But anyway,
I think that Tanner Gentry can be a nice player. And what does that mean? I don't know. The number 3, maybe number 4 wide receiver.
Yeah.
He has good straight line speed. He can go up and get the ball. So, he's nice in the red zone area. And on deep routes, things like that. But I don't think that he gets enough separation on the intermediate throws and the short throws to be what I would consider to be in that upper tier of wide receivers. And by upper tier, I'm talking, Alshon Jeffrey or somebody in that range. I'm not talking Julio Jones or Jordy Nelson. I mean, I'm talking that second to third tier of wide receivers where those guys are really good, but they're not considered to be great.
And that's kind of why he started the year in the practice squad, because the Bears want him to develop that or see if he can. But they had to call him up, obviously, because the receiving corps was depleted. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that I think that it's nice to see him up here. But to be perfectly honest, I don't think he's even the first wide receiver up. I think, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head. The player that the Bears signed off of Tennessee's
Trey McBride.
Yeah, Trey McBride. There you go. I think he's probably the first man up as far as being active on game day. My guess is that Tanner Gentry might take a couple weeks for him to crack the 45.
Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I'm just going to laugh when Tanner Gentry scores 2 deep touchdowns against the Buccaneers on Sunday. Who's going to be laughing then, Andrew? Who's going to be laughing then?
I'll laugh right with you. Nothing would make me happier. Trust me, I would love it, but I'm not expecting it, and I don't think anybody else should either. So.
Yeah, absolutely. From the other question that we have here, that we wanted to focus on, at Runaway Bacon asks, assuming Fox is out this year, what coaches should we look at to replace him and develop Trubisky? I prefer to wait until closer to midseason. We see kind of what hotshot coordinators are developing, or what new guys, maybe a new face emerges. But there's just a short list. You have Matt Patricia, longtime defensive coordinator there in New England. I know a lot of people are high on him. A lot of people believe he isn't just a product of Belichick, that he could kind of run his own team, that Belichick's kind of given him the reins. That's been the sentiment that's come out of New England. So he wouldn't necessarily be the worst choice. You have Pete Carmichael, current offensive coordinator, similar situation where he has a brilliant offensive mind in charge that's kind of let him take care of things. In Sean Payton, he wouldn't be the worst. I mean, you have that Saints connection there. You also have Sean Payton potentially. I don't think that's going to happen, but there's that whole anyone in New Orleans essentially. You have Jim Bob Cooter, who I believe is out of the league, but he's also a possibility. There's always Josh McDaniels is always a name brought up this time of with coaches. He's in a pretty cushy gig with New England, but you never know when he's going to decide that he wants to run his own team again, because whenever he decides to, someone's going to hire him. He's going to be probably one of the hotter commodities. He could be a possibility. And, as far as that, there's also Dowell Loggains, obviously. He has a long way to go if he wants to be the guy promoted from within. But I think he gets too much of a bad rap on occasion. I think he's actually kind of a brilliant offensive mind that sometimes gets his own way. And I wouldn't necessarily be mad. I'm not sure if he's the guy that would necessarily lead to the Super Bowl, but he'd be perfect for the first few years of the Trubisky era when that officially starts. So I wouldn't be mad with Trubisky, or rather with Loggains. And then there's always there's the complete lawn shot dark horse. No one ever talks about it, or everyone talks about it, but it's just absolutely never going to happen. But if you wanted the Bears to immediately end their 32-year drought now, 31-year drought, whatever it is, Jim Harbaugh, but he's not going to leave Michigan. I mean, something drastic would have to happen. Maybe if the Bears opening comes again, he's going to decide to leave behind all of that, similar to McDaniels, all of that cushy gig and all of that money and happiness with his alma mater to his original NFL team. I don't see it, but I guess we have to discuss the possibility. And I just want to put preface to the original question, assuming Fox is out this year. I mean, it's like 99%. It's a pretty safe assumption. So start looking, more or less, for coaching candidates within the next few weeks or so. I mean, regardless of the Bears' performance, because it's not going to happen unless the Bears are a playoff team, or unless the Bears are like 8-8 and 9-7 and occasionally blowing out teams. He's not going to be back. So this can be a relevant conversation tentatively for the moment. So with that in mind, let's jump to the Week 2 schedule and then make our picks for Bears-Buccaneers, Andrew.
Hey, I noticed you didn't say anything there about Dave Toub.
Dave Toub. You got to say he's
got a Bears guy, ex-Bears coach. Special teams like the coach Ditka.
Oh yeah, might be good. I'm not sure though. You do it so much better. I'm sorry. Yeah, Dave Toub would be an option on a serious note for another one of kinds of those guys if he wanted to come back. New regime, so there's no fragmented relationship here the way it was with.
No hard feelings.
Yeah, there are no hard feelings with the new guys in charge. At any rate, let's get to the picks. So tonight, what a game! Texans at Bengals. 9 combined turnovers for both teams in their Week 1 games. Deshaun Watson getting his first official NFL start against Andy Dalton. Who you got, Andrew? Texans at Bengals.
I got Bengals at home. I like the fact that the Bengals are at home, and I'm not a Deshaun Watson fan, and I think that I think their Texans offense is going to struggle with him at the helm.
I think he's going to take his lumps early, but I also think the league is starting to really figure out Andy Dalton. So I will go the opposite. I think the Texans are going to harass Andy Dalton. They kind of have a history of doing that to him as well, whether it be on the road or at home, especially in the dreaded Saturday night wildcard games that no one really watches, or Saturday afternoon wildcard games that no one watches. So I'll pick the Texans there. Browns or Ravens?
I think I'll take the Ravens. The Ravens are at home. The Browns are they're going with Kaiser. I think that defense is too good for a rookie quarterback to beat him. I'll take the Ravens.
The Browns actually had one of the more surprising efforts next to the Bears, according to the national perspective. Almost upset the Steelers 21-18. Deshaun Kaiser wasn't necessarily great, but they came close. I think, though, that the Steelers are a much better football team theoretically than the Ravens, and I actually think if you count this as an upset, the Browns will go into Baltimore, and if I'm not mistaken, it might be their first win in there over and over a decade. So I'm predicting a little bit of history on that note. Going back to the schedule, sorry, we're leaving that for the end, but it was just an order. Minnesota at Pittsburgh.
Minnesota at Pittsburgh. Yeah, I'll take Pittsburgh. I like a lot of the home teams this week, and I don't think the Vikings are that good. I think that they beat up on a very poor Saints defense. I don't like the Vikings. I don't think that the Vikings are as talented as people want to make them out to be.
Agreed. It was 1 week thing. Let's not forget they also started 5-0 last year. They didn't have the best of competition. I think Pittsburgh's probably a top 5 team in the league. They're the second best team in the AFC. They'll kind of flex their muscles over an inferior team here. Patriots at Saints.
We both took the Patriots last week, and
that didn't count well, but that was because the Chiefs are. It seems like the Chiefs are probably better than we thought, who are up next. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, and after the Patriots kind of got embarrassed in the second half of that game last week, I have to imagine that they are going to be pissed off, for lack of a better term, and they're going to take it to the Saints, and I have a feeling that they are going to take it to them hard.
This has the feel of a 40-burger type game.
Oh, yeah.
Especially given the Saints' defense and a lot of the talent the Patriots have, so this won't be close.
This has a feeling of Jimmy Garoppolo playing in the fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. probably by the end of the second quarter. Eagles and Chiefs.
I'm
This is a good matchup, I think.
It is a good matchup. I still like the Chiefs. I mean, that defense really played well last week, and
don't lost Eric Berry for the season, as a note.
They did. I still like the Chiefs, though. I think that they're just a better team. Carson Wentz is still a work in progress, and yeah, I like the Chiefs at home.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Carson Wentz. A lot of the great efforts that the Philadelphia had against Washington in their opener was based around their defense. Alshon Jeffrey kind of had struggles getting open against Josh Norman. I expect that kind of to continue against Marcus Peters, who in my mind is a better corner. And I like the Chiefs big here, so in that respect. Titans at Jaguars. Jaguars broke a franchise record for sacks against the Texans. Just fun fact. In their illustrious history.
Illustrious history. And this is a bad game. I don't like either one of these teams, to be perfectly honest, but I think that the Jaguars are gonna crash back down after this, and I'm taking the Titans.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something else there. I agree. A better quarterback wins out here too. I think the Titans are probably a little bit overrated, but the better quarterback wins out. Marcus Mariota. They'll rebound after a tough game against Oakland. Arizona at Indy. So we got two teams that were kind of pushed around in their openers against Cardinals, against Detroit, and Colts. I don't think the Colts didn't convert one first down against the Rams in a 46-9 loss. So who you got there?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that just like we were talking about.
So
what's that?
Still no Andrew Luck, obviously.
Yeah. So like you said for last week or the last game before this, the Titans Jags. I got to go with the better quarterback, and that's obviously Arizona as a better quarterback in this matchup. And I think that they kind of got embarrassed a little bit by the Lions, which is embarrassing to even utter that statement. So, I'm looking for Arizona to bounce back in this game, and I just don't think that the Colts have it in them. Yeah,
the Arizona lost their star tailback and David Johnson, which also killed many fantasy teams. Rest in peace. But that's not going to affect them here. The Colts, to me, are probably might be the worst team in the league. I know maybe it's a week one overreaction, but when they don't have Andrew Luck propping them up, this is kind of what you're going to get. And Arizona, they don't really need – I know it sounds blasphemous to say they don't need their superstar running back, but they don't need their superstar running back to beat the Colts. Bills at Panthers.
Bills at Panthers. Bills are pretty brutal.
Those are also pretty brutal, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go Panthers. And just as a side note, I think your top 5 picks next year are going to be the 2 New York teams, the Colts, the Bills, and the 49ers. I think that's your top 5 picks next year. Just throwing it out there for anybody who is curious.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. I'll also go Carolina. They were a little shaky. Cam Newton was a little shaky at times in their opening win over the 49ers. But I think the Panthers are a playoff team this year. I'm eager to see how they kind of unleash Christian McCaffrey over the next few weeks. That's going to be a sneaky good team there.
Yeah, I agree.
Jets at Raiders. So Raiders coming out of a tough win against Tennessee. Nice little grind out there against another rising young squad. And then you just kind of noted it. The Jets. Well, they're the Jets. I can't really say anything else. That describes everything.
Yeah, I mean the Jets are legit trying to tank. I mean that's obvious, and they're going across 3 time zones to go play this game.
Yeah,
I think that the Raiders win pretty handily, pretty easily.
Pretty big. I would expect this to be a game where Derek Carr kind of wins a lot of fantasy games. Dolphins at Chargers. So we got Jay Cutler making his debut for Miami after Hurricane Irma displaced their game against the Bucs, going against the Chargers, who enjoyed a typical Chargers loss, if we're being honest, against the Broncos, where they came back from, I believe, 2 touchdowns down and then had their field goal blocked anyway, and a lot of just general Charger mismanagement. Who you got here?
Yeah, that is a pretty typical Chargers loss. I've always been a Cutler fan. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm taking the Dolphins. That's my number 2 team this year. I can't root against him. I love the guy. What can I say?
I'm not going to give up on the Chargers yet. I expect them to still be in position to blow this game because that's what they do. But they'll come out on top. I picked them in the playoffs. I picked Anthony Lynn for Coach of the Year. Mock me all you want in a few months. But I am a man of conviction, Andrew, and I will stick with Los Angeles.
I picked Adam Gase as the Coach of the Year, so I got the Dolphins.
Men of conviction.
That's right.
49ers at Seahawks. So I actually think this is kind of an interesting game because Seattle's offensive line seems worse than usual. They kind of let Green Bay's pass rush isn't fantastic, do whatever they want against them in their opener. What do you got here?
Despite the fact that Green Bay's pass rush isn't stellar, it's still, in my opinion, a step up from the 49ers pass rush. They have a lot of mismatched parts on that defense because they used to be a 3-4 team and drafted that way, switched to a 4-3 team, and now they're stuck with parts that don't really fit. That being said, I think that the Seahawks win by 3 scores.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's close.
You have – did Brian Hoyer get hurt last week? I didn't see that. Did he get hurt last week?
He did. I don't know if he's like out for this week or not, but –
Okay, well, so Brian Hoyer against Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill and the Legion of Boom, who's still still has an elite defense. Not pretty. I'm not even sure the Seahawks offense has to score any points here. Yeah, it's the truth. So Seahawks big, agreed. Redskins at Rams. Ooh, so we got hype darling Jared Goff lighting up the Colts. Can he continue it against Washington?
That's a really interesting game, and honestly, I think you're looking at just a pure matchup and an entertainment value, that's going to be one of the more entertaining games of the week, in my opinion. Yeah. I think that's going to be a really good game. I'm taking the Rams. I think that the Eagles played the Redskins really tough, and I think that the Rams are a sneaky better team than they were last year. So I'm taking the Rams.
I really liked Sean McVay as a hire. I think he's good for Goff. I think he's good for that offense and that team. I believe Aaron Donald's even returning this week, which is Kirk Cousins is probably not happy about that. So I think the Rams big too. 2-0 for them. It's just a shame that no one in Los Angeles will care.
That's true.
Cowboys at Broncos.
Ooh. That's interesting.
I believe America's Game of the Week on Fox, to be just as a note. So, of course, Dallas and Denver. But anyway.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to take Cowboys on the road.
Okay.
I don't think the Broncos are able to score enough points to keep up with the Cowboys. Yeah, that Broncos defense is still pretty good, but it's not what it was.
It's not the 2015 unit.
Yeah, and even without Ezekiel Elliott is playing, right?
Yeah, he is playing.
Well, then, yeah, this isn't not even a contest. The Cowboys are going to win that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Trevor Siemian, I know you like him more than most people do. I also agree he's a capable game manager, but Dallas is one of the best teams in the league, especially when they're allowed to have Elliott around. Yeah. So they'll win here. And then I think, to me, we have 2 games left, but to me, this is the game of the week, Sunday Night Football. Green Bay at Atlanta, rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. Teams also met in the regular season last year. Falcons won both matchups. Who you got?
I hate to do it again, but I got to take the Packers.
Ooh.
I still think that the Bears played well last week. I'm not going to take anything away from the Bears playing well last week. I also think that the Falcons did not play to their capabilities.
Right.
And I think that that's going to be a common theme throughout the season, as it normally is with Super Bowl losers. And personally, I think that as long as Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback of the Packers, that's a tough team to beat. And I got to say, I was not impressed with the Falcons' defense. I think that the Packers can very easily put up 35 points on them. no problem. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's going to be kind of a shootout game. I don't think either one can stop the other one.
I think aside from Akeem Hicks, the Bears' best defender on Sunday was the Soldier Field's turf. A lot of Falcons slipping on plays they probably would have had bigger gains on. That's not going to be an issue on their new home turf. I think this is the first game in their new stadium. And I don't think they're a good matchup for the Packers. It won't be a blowout like the NFC Championship. I think it'll be, like you said, it'll be a shootout. But the Falcons will come out on top. So we'll see that in respect. And then I don't know if this is a good game, but Odell Beckham Jr. should be back for the Giants at home against the Lions. Who you got before we go Bears-Bucs?
I got the Lions. I think the Giants are awful. I think they're an awful team, and I think that the Lions are an above average team. They're not good. Right. They're not bad.
They're equipped to take it. They're a good enough team to take advantage of a bad team.
Correct. And the Giants are a bad team, and I think they will take advantage of them on Monday night.
Giants' offensive line is one of the worst in the league. Eli Manning's probably done, if we're going to be honest. This isn't like Tom Brady a few years ago. Like, Eli Manning is actually probably done. No receiver like Odell Beckham is that important to where they're immediately going to blow teams out and be a Super Bowl contender. I like Detroit too. We'll just see how it plays out. Finally, Bears at Bucs. Andrew, pick, score, reasoning.
Yeah. So I got the Bears winning, and hold on, I'm trying to grab my pick from earlier today because I want to make sure that I don't give you something different than I.
Right. No worries.
It's actually going to be on the website here. Let's see. What did I say? 27-17.
Yeah,
I think that's what I picked.
Yep. I see it here.
Yeah, so 27-17 is what I'm going with. We talked about it earlier. I think that the Hurricane Irma definitely affects them. I don't think that there's much advantage to the Bucs having a little bit of tape on the Bears and the Bears not having any on the Bucs. I mean, they played each other last year. I think more changed with the Bears than changed with the Bucs. And I think that the Bears are going to come out and be pissed, and like I noted, for the picks later on, that'll be up on WCG later. One of Lovie Smith's more famous quotes was, the biggest leap that a team makes in an NFL season is between week 1 and week 2. Just like a rookie going from, year 1 to year 2, that's usually the biggest leap for them. I think that the Bears have already been punched in the mouth. The Bucs haven't. So I think that there's something to be said for that. Going into that first week, usually you're a little tentative, or you're a little overexcited, or jittery, whatever the case may be. The Bears are already over that, and I think that they play more calmly, more their game from the onset. So that's why I got the Bears.
I hate to do this for the second week in a row, but I do think the Buccaneers are overrated. I don't think they're a good team, but I also think the Bears are still too limited offensively. I like the Buccaneers' weapons. I'm not a huge fan of Jameis Winston, but I picked 31-20, and I'm going to stick with that. This is the kind of game where they can still flex their roster strengths. We noted earlier that pass rush is going to be terrific against the turnover-prone Winston. That defense against the run has been particularly great. So this is tailor-made for the Bears to win. But this is a game predicated on who can make the big plays in the passing game. And even if the Buccaneers will be struggling throughout much of the game, they'll be able to come through with a big bomb to Deshaun Jackson or a big bomb to Mike Evans downfield, something that simply the Bears can't do if they're in dire straits. And that'll ultimately be their downfall. The Bears defense essentially has to play a perfect game, which they just might do based off of all the context we've given, but I don't think they will. And I think there'll be another back-breaking breakdown that we'll be lamenting, and Buccaneers will light up the Bears a little bit in their home opener, a little bit of inspiration from the hurricane fallout. All right, that should just about wrap up this week's episode of WCG Radio. Andrew Link joined me. You can follow us on Twitter at WC Gridiron for all of your best Bears news and coverage as usual. Got a lot of good stuff coming up over this weekend, and just constantly churning the content and the analysis out, play breakdowns, video notes, analysis, just getting really thorough. Follow Andrew on Twitter at BearsLink82. Follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski. And everyone, let's just, I guess, hope for a Bears victory here Sunday afternoon, as much as my negative pessimism gets in the way. Stay classy, everyone. Enjoy the next few days.